if you look at the sports betting market right now, it's a multi-billion-dollar market, but they have to fiercely compete. And I would say, hey, their CAC is, obscene. Um, and they are extremely extractive. Um, I think that there's an opportunity with leverage. I mean, the reason people like sports betting are the parlays. And if you analyze the structure of a parlay from a, remotely quantitative perspective, and I use that term kind of loosely there, but if you just like do the math on a parlay, it's a really bad deal for the bettor, and it's an awesome deal for the house basically. And yet they're extremely popular, I think, because the sports betting apps have gotten very good at optimizing the dopamine loop and optimizing the variable reinforcement and these sort of psychological things that can be quite addictive. But I think that leverage, so not even getting into perps yet, but leverage on prediction markets will, I think, enable them to take a giant bite out of that market specifically. I think there is a nice halo effect on prediction markets as well. Who knows how long this will last, if it will increase or decrease. And my guess is it'll kind of decay. But there's a halo effect of, people think of prediction markets as associated with like Nate Silver and doing kind of wonky stuff about, there's this intellectual vibe to it that doesn't feel as degenerate as a lot of the other stuff, including sports betting. So there's less of a stigma around it, even though it is absolutely gambling if you want it to be. Then, to directly answer your question, though, I think what defines a successful perps exchange, whether it's a DEX or a centralized exchange, doesn't really matter, is liquidity and is at the end of the day, it's the execution that you can achieve on it. So the missing piece for prediction markets there is sort of there's different terms you can use for it, but the buy pressure or the buyer who's buying the yes or no tokens from markets for a reason other than trying to bet that that's the token that'll win. So you can call it soft flow, you can call it price agnostic flow, whatever. But there's no one who's really using prediction markets the way perps are being used in a lot of cases as market maker strategies to hedge other positions somewhere else. And that flow that's not trying to just win in that specific market for perps is really critical to the health of those markets and to that liquidity and ultimately to the execution quality you can get on the different perps dexes. That doesn't exist in prediction markets right now. And you can see Polymarket definitely recognizes this. I think they're offering like 4% yield just for sitting in a position out of their pocket. I mean, it's totally unsustainable. Like, it's an expense for them. But I understand why they're doing it, because there's no way other than that right now to incentivize liquidity to come into a market if that liquidity is not there to try to, pick the winning side of the market. So all flow basically on the prediction markets right now is, I think it's a stretch to call it toxic flow, but it's there to try to win. What our protocol does is, because you can earn yield for lending the yes or no tokens from any of the markets, you get a new kind of buyer and a new kind of buy pressure on Polymarket to start with, where people will be buying tokens if the yield is good enough, not caring if that token is the one that's going to win and not really caring as much about the price they're buying it at, just because they can earn yield for supplying that token to people who want to leverage up or down, go leverage long or short on it. So that's, kind of, again, a longish answer. But I think that the first thing that will happen, I think that with leverage and with perps like functionality, prediction markets can really start to compete with totally off-chain sports betting. Um, I think that they open up, like you said, perps weren't really a thing until they went on chain, even though the concept existed. I mean, perpetual options are a thing before that, but it took the blockchain to really enable that. I think that what prediction markets with leverage will enable is betting not just on sports, but on, I guess, what people are calling mention markets, or like betting on other types of non-deterministic outcomes. Like, will somebody in some live event say some word, how many times will they say it, things like that, without leverage, what you get. I mean, there's clearly a lot of demand for these much shorter term markets. And in the extreme, you have something like Euphoria and the many Euphoria clones that copy that UI, where you're basically tapping squares on a price chart and you are entering basically into a very short term prediction market. Will the price cross this square or will it not? Um, which is an interesting way to sort of put a UI around very short term prediction markets. You can talk about that as an option as well. But what the leverage enables is meaningful trades on along very short time frames, no matter how long the market itself is. So even if it's like 2026 election, um, or I guess that would be like the primary and then the midterms. Even if that's a very long-term market, if you enter into that now, with leverage, if like you buy yes at 40 cents for some candidate and it moves to 43, with enough leverage, that can be a very meaningful trade. And that's a much shorter term position than just entering that market and waiting until it resolves over a year from now. And that kind of changes the entire nature of the game.